Let's take a look at DSMA2 linear equations. This video is going to be in two parts. Now, when we're in algebra, we have two things that we do when we start seeing x's and y's. We solve and we simplify. So two very different ways that we go about it, and we're going to look at both ways. This one says simplify. Notice in the original problem there's no equal sign. So the first thing we're going to do there is we're going to take care of that 2 that's outside the parentheses. This is really 2 times. And so it's 2 times 4x. It's also 2 times negative 6. And we have to distribute that so that we can clean this up. So if we do that, 2 times 4x would be 2 times 4, which is 8 times x. So that would leave me with an 8x. And then 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. The 15x out here does not get multiplied by 2 because it's not inside the parentheses. All right, so let's talk just real quick about adding like terms. So of course, if we have two numbers, we can add and subtract all day long. If we have, let's start easy. Let's say we have 5x plus 2x. So this would be like having 5 apples and getting 2 more, right? At that point, you have 7 apples. We don't do anything to the x's when we're adding and subtracting. We only look at what we call the numerical coefficient. That's the number in front. So remember, this is 5 times x plus 2 times x. And so since these are what we call like terms, they both have an x that's not raised to any power other than 1, we can go ahead and add those. If I gave you 13x, whoops, doesn't look like 13, minus 3x, same idea. They're both x's. And so we can take 13 minus 3, which gives us 10, but we still have the x. We don't do anything with the exponent. We just leave that be. So over here, we have an 8x and a 15x. So we can go ahead and add the 8 and the 15. That gives us 23x. And then we have minus 12. Now we can't go any further because it didn't say solve. It didn't tell us what this is equal to. It didn't tell us what x was equal to for us to substitute in for x. These two are not like terms because the first one has an x, the second one does not. And therefore, we have to leave this be. That is it. That is the answer. We have simplified as much as we possibly can. All right, so again, we have that multiplication in front of the parentheses that we need to take care of. I didn't mention it in the last slide, but this is actually called the distributive property. It's a very important property in algebra. So we're going to go ahead and take 7 times 5, 7 times negative 6, and over here we're going to take 4 times 3 and 4 times 5. So when we do that, 7 times 5 is 35, but the y still has to come down. 7 times 6 would give us negative 42. And then 4 times 3 times y would give me 12y, and 4 plus 5 is 20. All right, so I now have taken care of the numbers out in front of the parentheses. I've distributed those, and now I can go ahead and add like terms. So we have a 35y here and a 12y here. Since they're both y's raised to the power of 1, we can add the numbers in front, the numerical coefficients. So that would give me what, 47y. And then we have the two numbers. So we have negative 42 and positive 20. So I can add those two together, and that's going to give me negative 22. Now at that point, I have to stop because this said simplify. It didn't say solve. If it said solve, it would be y equal to something at the end. But we don't know what this is equal to in order to solve. We don't know the value for y. And we know that these two are not like terms, so I cannot go any further. This is as simplified as I'm able to do for this problem. Now, I know this looks a little funny. It says write the given algebraic expression without parentheses. In other words, simplify. And there's a negative out front. So technically, this is -1 times everything inside. Right? We just don't write it that way. Oh, that kind of looks like an X. I don't want that to look like an X. We'll put a little dot to make sure. So that is multiplication. Sorry about that. So let's go ahead. We're going to take -1 times 4x. So that's -4x. -1 times -8 would give me a +8. We always have to be careful with our signs, right? That's what gets all of us. So negative times a negative is going to give us a positive. And you can always put this in your calculator, just not with the variables. So you could put -1 times -8 just to back yourself up. But -1 times -8 gives me a +8, but I have to bring the y down. And then -1 times -4 gives me +4. So all of the signs have changed by having that negative out front. Now we have to see if we can clean anything else up, but it doesn't look like it. We have an x in the first variable as the first variable. Then we have a y, and then we have no variable. So none of these are like terms. Therefore, we are simplified, and that's what we're going to put in for the answer. All right, our instructions say find the value of the variable that satisfies the equation. In other words, solve, check your solution. All right, so if it's been a while, we're gonna take this step by step. You can also, there's lots of practice in the homework, or you can go to Khan Academy and ask, just put in linear equations, and they'll give you some practice as well. All right, so what happens when we solve is we want x equal to something. Okay, well, our problem right now is it's all kind of muddied up. The x is right here, but it has 5 times x, and then it's subtracting 12. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to get the variable all by itself on the left side and all of the numbers on the right side. So what we want is we want this -12 to move across the equal sign. In other words, we don't want -12 on this side. Well, the way to get rid of it would to change it to 0, right? So if we take -12 plus 12, we would get 0, which is the whole point. We want to get rid of that. But if we add 12 on this side, we have to also add 12 on this side. With equal signs, you have to keep them balanced. So if you have whatever you do to the left side, you have to also do to the right side. And so what that leaves us with is 5x minus 0. We're going to get rid of that in a minute. And 45 on this side. So we would have 5x equal 45. So basically what happens is you're going to do the opposite. If you see -12, you're going to add 12. If you see plus 12, you're going to subtract 12 so that we get rid of that number. So now we also have to do the opposite. This is actually 5 times x. Right? So we're going to do the opposite, and we're going to divide by 5 because we want x all by itself. But if we divide by 5 on that side, we also have to divide by 5 on this side, which is terrific. On the left-hand side here, 5 over 5 is 1, so I get 1x. We don't have to write the 1. You can if you want. And on this side, 45 divided by 5 gives us 9. Okay, so we're pretty sure that's the answer, but let's come over here and check. So what we're going to do is we're going to substitute 9 in for x, and we're going to check, kind of like we did in DSMA 1. All right, so we have 5 times 9, because that's the answer we got down here, minus 12, and we want to know if that equals 33. Well, we'll get 45 minus 12, see if that's equal to 33, and sure enough, 33 equals 33. So that's our check. The answer they want is just this, what they call the solution set. So us engineers, we do x equal to 9, and that's how we would answer that. But in this problem, they're giving you a solution set that looks like this. Therefore, you're just going to put the 9 inside. Don't put x equal to 9 because the computer will count that wrong. All right, let's try another one. It says solve and check the following linear equation. We have 7x minus, and then parentheses, 3x minus 4 equal 28. So we have a little more going on with this one, but we know how to do this. With distributive property, we're going to go ahead and distribute that -1 that's sitting out in front of the parentheses. We're not going to do anything to the 7x out front because it doesn't have a negative in front of it. It doesn't have parentheses. But we have -1 times 3x, that's minus 3x. And then we have -1 times -4, that gives us plus 4. Okay, so that was a distributive property. Now we have to clean up both sides. It's really important, otherwise things get all muddied up. It's really important to clean up each side and then start moving things. So if we look on the left-hand side, the only thing that we have in common is the 7x and the 3x. The 4 doesn't have an x. So let's go ahead and take care of that. 7x minus 3x gives us 4x. Plus 4 equal 28. So now we're cleaned up on both sides, and now we can start moving things around. So remember, we want the x by itself on the left-hand side. That means we need to get rid of this plus 4. Well, we can do that by subtracting 4, as long as we subtract 4 on both sides. Okay, so since we add plus 4, we're going to do the opposite, which is minus 4. That gives me 0 on this side. However, if I subtract 4 on the left, I have to also subtract 4 on the right. So that gives me 4x equal to 24. Let me move it up here. Okay, we're almost there, but we want x all by itself. We just want x equal to. So remember, this is really multiplication. It's really 4 times x. So we can divide, because 4 over 4 would give me the 1, but I have to also divide on this side. All right. So now I have x on this side because 4 over 4 is 1. 24 over 4 is 6. And then you could go ahead and check it. I'm going to keep moving, but all you would do is put 6 into both x's and see how that goes. All right, so solve and check the linear equation. Again, we have a lot going on. So let's go ahead and take care of distributive property first. On the first parentheses, we're going to take 4 times x and 4 times -3. The 19 is not inside the parentheses, so we don't have to worry about that one, but we do have to bring it down. Then we have 3 times x and 3 times 5. All right, make sure I did that right. I think I'm good. So now let's clean up each side. On the left-hand side, we have a 4x, but no other x's, but we do have 2 numbers that we can add together. So we end up with 4x, what is that, plus 7 equal to 3x plus 15. Okay, so both sides are cleaned up. Let's go ahead and move this 7 first. I learned to move my x's first, but so whichever way you learned. We have a plus 7 here, so let's subtract 7, which means we also have to subtract 7 here. That gives me 4x equal to 3x plus 8. So we're almost there. Now on the other problems, we didn't have an x on both sides, so we didn't have to deal with this, but we do need to move that 3x over to the left. Make sure you bring the x with it though. This is not division, this is subtraction, right? So we are going to subtract 3x from both sides. On this side, everything goes away, because if you have 3 chocolate chip cookies and I take 3 away, you have none, right? And we're not going to put 0x. All right, so on the left-hand side, we have 4x minus 3x, which is just 1x. But again, we just write it as x. On the other side, we have 8, and we are good to go. And then, of course, to check your work, you would have to put 8 into both sides and make sure that that works. It's always smart to check your work, especially on a test. All right, I'm gonna give you a minute. Well, not a minute. I'm gonna give you just a little bit to get started on this one. Again, we're gonna solve. We've got to clean it up first, and then I'm gonna work quietly behind you. All right, so with distributive property, we take 4 times x, that gives us 4x. 4 times -2 gives us -8. -1 times x is -x, and -1 times -9 is +9. So now we need to combine like terms. Uh, 4x minus x would be 3x, and -8 plus 9 is +1. Okay, so now we have a decision. I really like my x's on the left, but notice it'd be a lot easier to just move that 1 over to the left. So let's do that. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides. That gives us 9 equals 3x. Then we can divide by 3. And technically, we get 3 is equal to x. I would immediately rewrite that because it really bugs me and put it x equals 3. With an equal sign, it doesn't matter which side, as long you can just flip-flop them as long as you take everything with it. And so our final answer is 3.